A group of lucky teenagers got a first-hand look at some big-time aircraft. As WCCO's Jason Rantala explains, it's part of an effort to inspire young people who may have originally not known about this career path.
Most things that they're seeing this week, kids don't ever get the opportunity to see.
24 middle and high school age kids got a first-hand look, both inside and out, of an F-16 and C-130 Hercules at the 133rd Airlift Wing on Tuesday.
Such big aircrafts that you never see in your, average everyday, airport.
There's so many jobs under the aerospace umbrella that we introduced to these participants.
Floyd Ballantyne is not only a pilot for United, but also director of OBAP, the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. It's a group he helped start 9 years ago, meant to introduce aviation careers.
There's a shortage of African-American females and just African-Americans, period.
To those who never thought they had the opportunity.
I grew up in a community where, just because I grew up in that community, a lot of the mindset of pursuing airline pilot careers was just out of my reach.
Kids got a chance to ask questions.
What's the max speed on this?
You're looking at about 330 knots as being kind of a max.
And learn.
It's amazing.
Amazing, fun, inspiring.
Really educational. I learned so much stuff.
Definitely up there in the career list of what I'd want to pursue.
So it's like opening new jobs and stuff that I didn't really know of.
Ballantyne says OBAP has led to real-life success stories.
Just last year, we just had one of our first participants become a professional pilot.
Stories he hopes continue for generations. Jason Rantala, WCCO News.
A Twin Cities man is climbing higher up the podcast charts. Take a look at why the St. Anthony podcast is being heard around the world. For this St. Anthony man, this is a familiar pose, and these are familiar items.
I like to joke that I came out of the womb holding a book.
Do you feel like books have been pivotal to your journey?
Absolutely.
Personally?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
So I grew up as queer and Armenian, and I didn't meet another person who identified as such until my mid-30s. And so for a long time, I felt like I was by myself, that I was this, fanciful unicorn that existed by himself in the world. How do you navigate this world when you're queer and Armenian? So books have been a really important part of my life, of understanding who I am. How do I live in this world? How do I find joy in this world? How do I have resilience, right, in this world? So books have been very important in my life.
And last year, he decided to take his love to a whole new level.
It's so great to have you here. I'm really looking forward to talking about your book today.
He co-founded a podcast called This Queer Book Saved My Life.
And so I thought it'd be great to have the guest there talking about the story that saved their life, bringing the author to talk about what it took to get that book into the world and what it meant to them to write that story.
Greg Louganis was one of his first guests. Since then, it's truly taken off, climbing to 38 on Apple's book podcasts.
We've been in the top 50 of those for the US, Canada, Australia, Luxembourg, France, Armenia, a number of countries.
JP says guests have explained how books from LGBT perspectives have helped listeners change thoughts about self-harm and escape abuse and truly feel seen and heard.
That is the main thing that folks, when they come onto the podcast, say it was the first time they saw themselves. It was the first time that they didn't have the words for something, but suddenly the words are there on the page and they understand something about themselves.
A Minnesota-raised singer, songwriter, and producer has collaborated with everyone from Ringo Starr to Stevie Wonder to Usher and Snoop. Now, for the first time, he has an album of his own. Our Derek James joined him in the studio to learn about his unique sound.
When you dive in, you're diving into Lake Minnetonka.
Michael Gabriel is describing the Minneapolis sound.
It's a little bit of church. It's a whole lot of fun. And rock and roll.
It's also the soundtrack of his life in music, the first note of which came on Prince and the Revolution's legendary Purple Rain tour.
My parents met while working on that tour, one in Prince's camp, one in Sheila E.'s camp. So I jokingly say I'm kind of this Purple Rain World Tour love child.
The singer-songwriter now realizes how unique it was growing up so close to the music icons.
Okay, well, it's not entirely normal for Prince to come over to the house, anybody's house, or to hang out with Sheila E. That, you know, they're not everybody's godparents.
When the purple one is your godfather, he's going to be one of your earliest influences.
I would emulate a lot of his moves with my plastic guitar, holding it, you know, upside down, backwards, you know, just running around.
Today, Prince's coolness can be found on Gabriel's debut album, Genesis. He also gets comparisons to guitar greats Jimi Hendrix and Lenny Kravitz.
Whatever the comparison is, I always like hearing what somebody else's take is on something that I did.
If you had to describe it in a few words, your sound.
It's a gumbo.
A great gumbo takes time. With the support of his parents, Gabriel has spent nearly 2 decades working as a producer, arranger, engineer, and mixer, on top of his touring as lead guitarist with Sheila E. and other bands. But his unique musical gumbo was always simmering.
I've had just a catalog of songs for years because, remember, my passion for music came from songwriting, so I've been writing all of this time.
Gabriel believes COVID turned up the heat on his efforts to bring his own music to the world.
And when you release something and, you know, make it public, I feel like it doesn't really belong to you anymore. And that's one of the reasons I've probably held on to some of these songs for so long, is because, you know, they were near and dear to my heart, but music is meant to be shared.
Genesis is a representation of his lifelong musical and spiritual journey, although you don't need to know the Bible to enjoy it.
The track sequence, going back to Genesis, in the beginning, direct biblical reference. Let there be light, direct biblical reference. Madam, I'm Adam, Adam and Eve.
Madam, I'm Adam, the new single, is more than a palindrome.
And if I were to do a rough portrayal of this character, what would that sound like?
Always creating, Gabriel shared with us what else he's working on.
Here's a song called Rejoice that's going to be featured on the deluxe version of Genesis.
Rejoice features his take on the Minneapolis sound that he hopes the hometown audience will get down with at the State Fair in August.
Everybody's getting get down low. That's what it's all. Just get down. That's it. It's all coming full circle. I tour a lot with different artists, but to finally have an opportunity to play my music, my show, live in front of an audience, that's why I did this in the first place.
In Minneapolis, Derek James, WCCO News.
A years-long bike ride around the world. How one man actually made it happen. That's next.